Welcome back to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name's James Black and I'm joined again by Cameron Willis so we can have a little talk about the transfer window, Rangers comings and goings, and kind of one or two potential transfers that might still be on the horizon. So first of all, we're going to have a little look at the players who've come into the club over the summer. There's been 8 altogether that have signed, including Hagi and Jermaine Defoe having their loans turned into permanent deals. So we'll just go through them kind of one by one, Cammy. Kind of get your thoughts on them, just kind of how they've done, and what your thoughts on them as kind of longer term signings are. So the first one that came in was John McLaughlin, come in from Sunderland on a free transfer. Immediately came into the starting 11 and impressed right off the bat. I think he kept 6 clean sheets in his first 7 games, or 7 in his first 8. What was your initial thoughts when he signed, and kind of how have you thought of him since he's been here?
I knew he was a good keeper from his time at Hearts because he had a good run when he was there, and then he obviously went down south to Sunderland. Hadn't heard as much from him. He's a Scotland international. I thought that we needed somebody in that position. It's interesting as well that we signed McLaughlin and Foderingham went to Sheffield United. Was interesting, but I think he just maybe wanted a couple of maybe more first team opportunities. But he's obviously done brilliant. He's a commanding presence. He's clearly got loads of experience. He's slotted in very, very nicely. I think they've got the right kind of personality with John McLaughlin to come into the side. He is so professional. When he was given his chance with McGregor, being out injured, he took it. He obviously was part of that like record-breaking run. And I think he's reliable. But what's been also been good, because McGregor's been out, when he's had his chance, he's had to step up, and he has stepped up. So it's keeping Alan McGregor on his toes as well. So it's providing real competition. And I can remember reading an interview, I think it was Václav Hagi, the boy at St Mirren, said that basically it was down to him and McLaughlin for who would sign for Rangers. And I think based on McLaughlin's early form, they made the right decision signing him. I think that he's a solid acquisition and he's good competition for McGregor.
Absolutely. I mean, at 32, the really interesting thing about McLaughlin coming in was that it was always going to be one that was geared towards, if he's going to play, he's going to play now. They weren't bringing him in with looking at him maybe sitting on the bench for a season and then gradually replacing McGregor. He was always coming to play football immediately. And when he's come in, he's barely put a foot wrong. Maybe he could have done a little bit better in the Hibs game, but other than that, he's proven to be a really kind of solid acquisition. Should McGregor decide to call it a day at the end of this season, you know you've got a really solid keeper there that can step up, and you've got Robin McCrory out on loan as well, who'll be coming back to the club this summer. So it's one position we're really, really set on.
I think it's maybe that overlap that what you're talking about.
Yep.
So when McGregor phases out, I think McLaughlin will come in. I think he was thoroughly scouted. I think we did a hell of a lot of work on that in terms of identifying him, and I think that was I think they deserve credit because I think it's the right signing. It couldn't have probably gone any better at this point because there's a healthy competition between the two goalkeepers, and there's clearly a mutual respect there as well. And I think he's been a solid signing. I like John McLaughlin, and even against Hibs, obviously it's because he's them 2 goals. He made an amazing save in that match.
Yeah.
But he's just never going to be Alan McGregor. Alan McGregor always gives extra 10% when he's playing for Rangers, and when he got recalled to that Willem II side, he basically showed who's really boss. He's got that experience at that level, but. No, it's reliable. It's driving competition, and I think it was a smart signing by Rangers because it's obviously been cost effective as well because he came on a free.
I mean, positionally, the next one that came in was Calvin Bassey. Now, Bassey was a complete wild card for me. I don't think anybody had heard anything of him prior to his deal being announced. He made his senior debut as a professional playing for Rangers, so it wasn't exactly huge screeds of tape to go back through and look at him. But the left backs came in. He's looked a unit. He's impressed when he's played, and all right, he's not going to replace Borna Barisic immediately, but it looks a solid enough signing so far.
No, I guess a long-term thing. He played for Rangers in a friendly, I think, for Leicester City youth team at Ibrox. I think from there they identified that they wanted to sign him, and I mean, Barisic is always going to play first, but there's always going to be opportunities because Barisic can be injury prone. Plus, he needs rested. It's a long season, so there's always going to be opportunities. And I think the lure of playing in Europe and being assured that he was going to be a squad player got him for us. And I think when he's came on, he's looked brilliant. He's looked energetic. There was a couple of kind of early kind of nervousness, particularly I remember the friendly against Leon and stuff, maybe a little bit out of position and stuff, but he's never played like an actual professional game. So it's to be expected. But I think you would barely know it. He's looked really, really good. He's a big, powerful unit. And see the amount of times that he's ended up in the box. He's been so unlucky not to score. He did score in a pre-season friendly.
Yep.
But he's been so unlucky not to score in a match. He's been showing up right at the back post. Like when he's came on, he's obviously full of running, full of energy. And I think, again, another smart signing by Rangers because it's cost effective because the cross-border compensation. Barisic is always going to be first choice, but he's ready to step in, and so far so good in that regard. And I mean, I don't think you can fault that one either. And I'm really, really excited what the future brings. I think he's only 20, so I mean that's a long-term project for Rangers and where it's going to go. He's already in the first team, and he doesn't look out of place. He looks fit, and again, that same personality things. He seems to fit in with the squad. He seems to have fit right in with all the other players, and I'm excited to buy him long term, but also short term. I think he'll do a job behind Barisic. But again, I think it's a smart signing by Rangers. I think it was a good piece of business.
I completely agree. Definitely, it's one of these kind of signings that, you know, as I said, we didn't know much about him when he came in, but since he has arrived, he's looked really assured. You can tell he's had a really good football upbringing, coming through the kind of Premier League academy system. Technically, he's a very, very sound footballer. It's just kind of getting him that experience now. And kind of judging on the game so far, Gerrard has looked to get him minutes. It's maybe only 10, 15 minutes here and there, but you know, he's building up that experience for him, so it should only help him in the long term.
And but see when he started him against Motherwell, obviously, but seeing that game was interesting because at the end of the game, Gerrard says that he didn't ask the fullbacks to bomb on as much, and he wanted them to play in the middle. So that technical thing you're talking about, the manager obviously trusts him. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they wanted him, they went out and got him, and they're showing that faith in him. And so far, he's repaying it. He's obviously not maybe had the chance to completely set it up alight, but he shows real promise.
Definitely. So the next defensive signing to come in was one more out of necessity than anything else. The arrival of Leon Balogun after Niko Katic suffered a serious knee injury. Now Gerrard spoke God knows how many times now about his desire to have two players in every position. So it led to need to bring in a fourth centre back, and Balogun it was a move that appeared out of nowhere. Kind of within maybe about 48 hours or so of Katic being injured, Balogun was there and paraded into the team. First game looked brilliant. Picked up an injury after that, and he's kind of been in and out of the side, and he's kind of struggled to establish himself since then. Came back into the team at the weekend, and I thought he looked a little bit rusty. He certainly didn't look the same composed player that he did at Pittodrie in the opening game of the season. But again, he's kind of had a few weeks out of the side, and still getting accustomed to a new team. So, what's your thoughts on Balogun so far, Cammy?
It's interesting because see, when we signed him, he'd obviously just been off the restart with Wigan, and I think that their fans really, really rated him. And obviously, he was playing for Brighton, which shows you the kind of level because Brighton signed him, taking him in. But I think his entire career, if you actually look back at his career, his game time's been so limited. He's German-born, plays for Nigeria. He seems to always get fit before Nigeria play because he's got a decent rate in Nigeria caps. I think it's in the mid-30s, but he's always appears to have been stop-start. So when we got him in that first early part of the season, I think that he was fit, and it was good because from then so far it's been worth it alone because he put in a really, really good performance against Aberdeen. What was a tough start. He looked really, really comfortable, but then he picks up them niggling injuries. And I agree with you, he did look a little bit off the pace a wee bit, but you'll get that fitness. I think that he's always going to be a kind of backup player, but he's a mature player. He's in his 30s. He's got a hell of a lot of experience, and he's good with the ball. He's got pace. He's like strong and powerful. He's got pace. He offers us something a little bit different from what we've got. I think he's a good kind of backup player, but I don't think he's going to dislodge Goldson and Hillander now, but I think we will see him used quite a lot, and hopefully he gets back up to that fitness, because I think that's a big part of the guy's game, because he's throughout his entire career he's always been kind of, I don't know, pulled back by little niggles here and there. So let's hope that he manages to get back up to that fitness, and we can see the Balogun that was playing against Aberdeen regularly, because he comes out deep into midfield, and it's good.
Speaking of midfield, that was an area of the park where Gerrard spoke all summer long that he's wanted somebody in, and he finally got his man 2 hours before the deadline last night. The arrival of Bongani Zungu from Amiens on loan. Tell us what you know about him then, Cammy.
That's been mad, man. That broke in July or something like that. And see, then I thought, there's something serious about this. We got in for him. Apparently, we bid £3.8 million, or 3.6 to 3.8, depending on what the exchange rate was at the time. But €4 million, they were saying. And then we pulled out of a deal. There was mixed reports about medical, mixed reports about Rangers never been interested, loads of different stuff.
Rangers
and then there was
themselves were adamant there was never any interest.
There was a few voices saying that, and I thought it looked legit. I thought there was too many people connected to the player commenting on it and doing reports on it for it not to be legitimate. And I think that the fact that we'd been tailing him since then speaks its own story. But it might be a case of maybe other targets didn't come to fruition or whatever, or Amiens finally buckled and let us have him on loan through this agreement, whatever it means that we've got to pay in the future. But he's clearly a player that we identified early on. He's a South African international who's incredibly highly rated by South Africans. Like they absolutely love him, and anybody around him seems to be praising him to high heavens and thinks it's a really good move for him. At 27 is a kind of pivotal moment in his career. He seems to have kind of taken to the club already on social media and stuff, and I think he seems quite excited by the move. But I mean, people that have studied him and things that I've read about him suggest that he's a very, very talented footballer who can spot a forward pass maybe better than anything that we've got, and he's got legs as well. So I think an exciting signing for us, and I just really want to see him get started, because I have not seen enough of him. I don't think anyone has, but everything points to it being a good signing. So let's hope so.
One of the interesting bits about the whole move for me has been this addition of an option to make his move permanent in the summer. And I think everywhere before yesterday had reported that his deal was up next summer. And then there have been mixed reports over whether Amiens have held an option to add an additional year, or whether they were just going to refuse to let him go out on loan unless it added a year on at the back end of his deal. I think either way, there's been something's happened which has led to him adding an extra year on his contract, which now means that Rangers will have to pay something next summer should they want to make it permanent. Does it just show kind of how much Rangers have wanted them in now, that they've kind of went through what seems to have been a hell of a lot of hoopla to get
I think but I think it also shows how badly the player wanted to come to Rangers, because you don't just sign an extra year onto your contract when he could have theoretically went to another club. I mean, apparently there was like clubs in Greece and clubs in Spain that interested. So the player pushed for it as well, because the player's got to sign the extra year. So I mean that's an interesting aspect of it. But I think kudos to Ross Wilson for negotiating a deal. I mean, there's no one that seems to say what the option to buy fee is.
It might not be one. It may just be one of these Rangers have up until a certain date where Amiens will not negotiate with anyone for the player. So it might just be one of these ones where there's no necessarily an actual defined fee yet. We might just have the exclusive. But either way, if he delivers, then I'd like to think that there's a deal negotiated, or at least the scope to negotiate a deal that would bring him to Ibrox permanently.
See, the thing is this setup also tests the player, because the player's got to come in and impress, and if he wants to earn the move, then he's got to play well. So it's good. It kind of protects our interests as well. We don't need to shell out as much, or like the €4 million that was being quoted, and I mean, we're putting the player up to the test. He's got to stand up and he's got to deliver. So maybe the whole thing as a whole benefits Rangers, rather than shelling out that much money for him to have injury problems or not to play or any of these other things that we've been hearing about in the press. So it protects everybody, and it kind of lights a wee bit of fire underneath them. So I'm excited about it. I think it's I mean, the comments of Steven Gerrard and Ross Wilson show that he's been tailed for ages, and they're very excited by him. I think he described him as a dominant midfielder, which kind of gives
What
you the
Rangers have
impression
needed.
The way that they want him to play. He wants him to just own the midfield and be the main kind of force in that midfield, the main legs, the main energy, and that'd be interesting to see how he settles. So, do you think he'll start against Celtic?
No, he'll be on the bench.
I think it'd be too soon.
Yeah, I think he's only played, 7 minutes or so of the season for Amiens. So it doesn't make sense that they're going to throw him in. He's not with the South African squad just now either. They're playing Namibia and Zambia. But the squad, I've looked at this yesterday, the squad's made up mainly the Olympic qualifying squad and a handful of kind of domestic veterans. So he's not with them. So he's not going to get minutes under his belt before we go to Parkhead in a couple of weeks. So I don't see it. Moving on to the next signing, it's another midfielder. It's the first of two loan deals that were turned into permanent ones, and Yanis Hagi. So I think everybody expects the world from Hagi, and all right, he's maybe not given the absolute heads and shoulder above everyone performances that everyone expects. He's still delivering a hell of a lot for Rangers so far this season. I think he's in his stats and he's had 6 assists in his last 6 games. So he's contributing something somewhere. What's been your thoughts on him so far this season, Cammy?
Well, he's a top assistant in the Scottish Premiership, I'm sure. And he's obviously massively talented. He's only 21. I think the way that he handles himself and the way that he speaks kind of gives you the impression that he's older. Plus, he's obviously been playing men's football since he was about 16, 17 at the Vittorio Constantina, his dad's team. So he's been around the block. I think he's obviously an immensely smart player when he plays well, which he has been doing maybe the last 3 games. More than he was at the beginning, because I remember the Livingston game he came in for quite a lot of criticism, because there can be times when teams get physical, like he flops onto the deck, or he can get a bit petulant and it can kind of upset his rhythm, and he's not focusing on his own game, he's kind of focusing on the players around him. But when he does, he's clear, he finds space. He's one of them players that when he gets the ball, he always seems to have an extra second. He's a really, really intelligent footballer. And he loves a first-time pass as well. And we've seen that in the last couple of weeks. He's a smart player. He's playing that hole. I think his returns speak for themselves. I think that maybe he'll become more of a dominant force in the field as he grows in confidence and he grows in experience with the Rangers. But no, I think that's a very, very good signing by Rangers. I think that he comes with that kind of pedigree for a reason, and he's capable of special moments. So, again, another smart signing. I think that £3 million for a player that could potentially rake us in millions in the future is excellent as well, because he's only 21. So maybe some Rangers fans, I include myself in this, have been a wee bit harsh on him in the past, expecting too much of him too soon, but he is delivering. So
I can't remember if it was you or if it was Jordan that I said this to last week. But he's younger than the McCrory twins.
I mean, that's mad to think about, isn't it?
We would never dream of putting the expectation on either Ross or Robbie McCrory at this age. They're still young players, still learning their trade. But we largely expect Hagi to carry this team at times. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's easy to see kind of why he's inconsistent. But for me, he's been a fantastic signing. It was an absolute steal getting him permanently this summer, and I hope we can keep holding him for a good couple of seasons, because I think he's a brilliant player who can only keep getting better for us. So moving on to the next one, I'm going to just group the next 3 together because it's Kemar Roofe, Cedric Itten and Jermaine Defoe. We've barely seen Defoe this season, just due to injury, but we all know what he brings. I don't think there's going to be any surprises when it comes to Jermaine Defoe. He'll get 20 minutes off the bench, he'll get some kind of quote-unquote lesser games, and he's going to be that older, experienced head to help the aforementioned Roofe, Itten, and of course Alfredo Morelos, who we've managed to keep. So yeah, Itten and Roofe both had a couple of goals in their first few games. They've both had fleeting appearances and both had a couple of injuries so far. but there's something about the two of them just can't help me thinking they're both going to be really good signings this season.
I think so. I think that's spot on. I think there's obviously class there. There's obviously good quality. I think that Roof's our marquee signing. I think even though we've got Hagi, even though we've got Zungu, I think we paid £3.5 million, or anywhere up to £5 million, depending on where you read. But I think the accepted fee is about 3.5. And when he has played, he has looked every inch worth it. He looked like a very, very smart player. He can play in any of them positions behind the striker or as the striker. He loves to play right on the last line when he plays up front. He's got amazing movement in between the lines. I think maybe that's like for Bengani Zungu to find him when he comes into the team. But he does look like a really, really, really talented player. He looks like a really good forward player and a completely different option to what we've had in recent seasons. And I'm excited for him to properly get around the team. The only thing that worries me about Kamal Roof is his injuries and his injury history, and the fact that he's injured just now, and hoping that he can stay fit. So I think that's like an old cliche from Leeds fans. I've been speaking to Rangers fans a lot. Is you've got yourself an amazing player there if he can stay fit. So I think that's the big challenge for Kamal Roof. It's the big challenge for kind of Rangers in the medical department, because I mean, from what I've seen of him, I think that he looks like a really, really, really top player at the level that we're playing at, and I think that he's an exciting signing. As for that, and I think there's somebody out saying today that there's a he's like a long term for it, but in the flashes that we've seen with Motherwell more than anything else, I mean, his first goal was brilliant, and he got his second one straight after, which is an amazing sign because he's just waiting for the first one to come. It kind of opens the dam. He looks like, again, a well scouted, thoroughly scouted, very, very, very good player, a powerful striker, can use both feet, can shoot from outside the box, he can be there for the 6-yard tap ins. I think that he's one to watch. I think that he'll only get better. He got 19 goals for St. Gallen last season. His kind of breakthrough season. I think he's a product of Basil's youth academy, and he's an exciting player. He's only 23, so I actually think that you'll get goals out of him as well this season. I think I'd be surprised if he scored less than 10. I think that as we use him, I think that he'll impress. So then obviously Jermaine Defoe, who's we've seen do it since he's been at Rangers, and he will continue to do it. He's just so sharp inside the box. He's got an amazing turn and shot, and he knows exactly where the goal is. But what's interesting is that we've signed 3 strikers, which just shows the over reliance on Morelos the last 2 seasons that we've now. I know we had the 4 on loan, but we've now made it permanent. We've added another 2, so we've got firepower that we've not had since Steven Gerrard was manager. You know what I mean? And what is particularly interesting is that these guys haven't even like completely fully hit the ground running yet. Do you know, like there's still most of our goals are coming from other areas of the pitch at the minute. So very, very exciting. And I think that if I think Itten long term will prove to be a very, very good signing. I just hope Kamal Roof can stay fit.
So moving to the outgoings, now there's been plenty of those over the summer, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. But we've seen the likes of Wes Foderingham, Andy Halliday, Jason Holt all leave at the end of their contract at the end of last season. Before this summer, we've now seen Matt Polster move on to New England Revolution. Greg Docherty's left to go and join Hull City permanently, while Ross McCrory, Robbie McCrory, Jamie Murphy, and a few others have all gone out on loan, with Ross McCrory and Jamie Murphy looking like they'll be leaving permanently in the summer. Now, kind of just over the course of the whole list of guys who've moved on, was there anybody you think kind of could have still done a job for us this season?
I think, by and large, yeah. I think that those guys were their last season, and they weren't really trusted, rightly or wrongly. They weren't really given opportunities. I think if you're going to say any of the obvious 2 are probably obviously Ross McCrory, Greg Docherty, and Jamie Murphy, who really weren't kind of given as much an opportunity as they might have liked. But by the same token, I don't think that we're going to again. So I think that Steven Gerrard and his team, and it might come back and bite them. You know what I mean? It might come back and bite them, but they've says to them, you're not going to get a game, so move on. But what's smart is we've got 2 of them out on loan, so that can potentially damage the likes of Celtic, but can't damage us. So Ross McCrory is probably the biggest one. There's a lot of gripes because of everything that was said in the past about him being a potential Rangers captain and stuff. And obviously, it's just not worked out as planned, and he's impressed at Aberdeen. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe he's a name that might ever come back to Rangers at one point in the future. But right now, for me personally, I think that those players weren't good enough for us going forward. And I think that the guys that we've brought in have been thoroughly scouted and are there for a reason. And whilst there's an argument that they strengthen the 11, they almost certainly strengthen the core squad. Whereas those guys were on the fringes. And I think, rightly or wrongly, they weren't going to get an opportunity. So it was right to move them on.
So there was also one Rangers player who was linked with an exit for the entire summer. But thankfully, Rangers have kept a hold of him. Alfredo Morelos. There was talk he moves to Fiorentina, to Lille, to AC Milan, to pretty much any club you can think of naming. Just throw their name out there. They were probably linked to Morelos. Now, last night there was Rangers fans on Twitter hailing this as the best bit of business the club's done in the transfer window, keeping a hold of Morelos. Do you agree?
On current form, Morelos 2019, for second half of 2019, absolutely. On current form, I think Morelos needs a wee bit of a boot. I think there's been flashes of it this season, but he's obviously had his head turned, but he needs to settle down, because if he doesn't start getting back into that rhythm, if he doesn't start being that focal point, like, I love the wee man, you know what I mean? I think he's an unbelievable footballer. I just think that he needs to recapture that form. Otherwise, we'll be lucky to get a bid, the £16 million bid that they'll put anywhere between 14 to 16 million. There's different kind of things in different publications, but on current form, I'm buzzing that we kept him. I think there was at one point in the window it looked as if it was nailed on that he'd be gone. It was like, I think every single Rangers fan had just accepted the fact that he was going to go. But nah, I think now he needs to knuckle down. And if he wants that dream move, which I don't think, I mean, when some teams were getting mentioned, there was Rangers fans going, "Oh, they're not big enough for Morelos. They're not big enough for Morelos," because of how good he was in the second half of 2019. But if he wants to get that dream move and he wants to go with the good graces of the Rangers support, then he needs to recapture that form, because Rangers clearly value him at a certain amount. They're not going to budge on it. And we want him to do well. We want him to do well at Rangers. I'm buzzing that he's here for this season, because he can be such a lethal player. He's the best striker that we've got. I think that he's the best, between him and Kent, the best talent that we've got and the best asset that we've got. But I think he now needs to go out and repay us, recapture that form, and earn himself that move. You know, I think he needs to properly get back to basics and earn his corn, and then we'll all celebrate when he gets a big move to an English club or a big club in the continent.
And for me, yeah, I completely agree. I think he needs to get back to his best. But for me, keeping him has been brilliant. I think in terms of natural goal scorers, I don't think we've had one quite like him since McCoist. Maybe Marco Negri, but there's just something about him. He can have a terrible, terrible game and then pop up in the 87th minute with a goal that comes off his arse. It's, he's got that luck at times that a lot of other players don't have. I just think that even with a lot of talk on about £20 million, when you see, and not to go to the ridiculous realms of the Premier League are paying this for this guy, so he must be worth, even looking a lot closer to home and just across the city. When you're starting to see similar players across there mentioned at £30-40 million, you kind of start second guessing it a bit from you, going, well, if he's worth that, surely Morelos is much closer to that than the 20 million that was originally kind of the benchmark price for him.
Yeah, but across the city, Morelos has been a bit, as frustrating as Morelos has been, he's been better than Edward. You know what I mean? So this season, I don't think you can argue with that. But I mean, that's just madness. I mean, they just pick up other players left, right, and centre. I think £20 million for the second half of 2019 Morelos is fair.
I think 20 million would have been a fair price. But I think we're now kind of back at that point where you're back level pegging the two prices of the two of them. Kind of the same thing happened with Dembele at Celtic. I always thought that before he left, if he was a £15 million striker, Morelos is a £15 million striker. And now you're getting to the point with Edouard where if he's a 25 million striker, Morelos is surely a 25 million pound striker, and so on. But just to move on to one final thing, the other big talking point of last night, apart from Rangers Twitter admin, who I need to doff my cap to, by the way. His pattern the last week or two has been amazing. I got sidetracked there, but Jack Wilshere.
Madness.
Binned by West Ham, free agent, £4 million in his back pocket as a payoff, apparently. Should he come to Rangers?
I mean, same thing as if he's fit, and he says he's fit. He left a Twitter post saying that he was fit, he was never given a chance at West Ham. He's played with Steven Gerrard. Steven Gerrard knows him. You know Steven Gerrard personally. I mean, Rangers are a big club, European stage. I mean, it could help him recapture his best form. You know, it could help him really feel special again. But because I think something like 17 injuries he's had in his career, he's been injured everywhere he's went, and because he's had that money, the only way that I think that Rangers could justify moving for him, because he's obviously a top player if he's fit, and he'd arguably be the best midfielder in the league, but has to stay fit. I mean, West Ham are paying him £100,000 a week for a reason. You know what I mean? But he needs. He couldn't come on our highest wage, which I think is £25,000. I mean, you can't just pay him £25,000 because he's Jack Wilshere if he isn't going to play. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much would justify it, but it'd be interesting. A fit Jack Wilshere, I think it would be a brilliant signing. But is he going to stay fit?
That's the thing. If you've got a fit Jack Wilshere, for me, he's the best player in the country, most likely. I think at his best, fully fit, brilliant, absolutely brilliant player. But it's keeping him fit. We're at a point now where it's a massive gamble. There's no getting away from that. His injury history is almost second to none. Darren Anderton maybe comes closest. Dated reference for you, but if they can get the finances right on it, I don't see why not.
I think the finances are okay. It comes down to that. If we can get him for a decent price, a decent weekly wage, and he's willing to make that sacrifice himself, then I think it'd be great. But there's bound to be offers that will offer him more money than what Rangers could.
Probably, but I think you get to a point where it doesn't necessarily become about money. He's sitting there, as I said, he's just had the guts of £4 million paid off to him to tear up his West Ham contract a year early. So if he wants to go out and he wants to kind of re-establish himself and reassert his name as being a kind of a high quality midfielder, is he going to have better options in coming to Ibrox and competing for a title, playing in the Europa League, and, you know, to all intents and purposes, playing the top end of football? Or does he want to go to a mid-table Premier League side where 1 win and 3 success? And do you really catch the eye there? Do you get that win back, that move back to the big time?
See, I'd agree with it. I think if it was me personally, I mean, I don't know actually, because it's a little bit money, but I'm a Rangers fan. But I mean, that would be, I think for him it'd be a great move if he can prove his fitness and we can get him on anything in a decent contract. Then I think exactly what you're saying is bang on. I think it gives him a platform that he's obviously not had for a long time. I think Steven Gerrard says that he wanted at least one new midfielder, which would suggest that there is space in the squad for another midfielder as they view it. So, I mean, if the finances are right, I'd be for it. I would be. I think that it'd be good, but it's a massive risk. And I mean, from Wilshere's point of view, maybe he knows he's injury prone. Maybe he'll be happily sign a contract where he's getting paid $50,000 a week down to somewhere just because he knows he's going to bugger his ankle again or something. I don't know.
That is very true.
Because, I mean, that ex-West Ham United employee said that Rangers had made contact with him. Plus, his Hagi on Twitter, I mean, he has to say that because he wants a new club. So, yeah. I mean, he has to prove his fitness, and then the finances have to be right, and he has to want to come to Rangers. He has to want exactly what you've said. He has to want to use this as a platform to elevate his career again. He's only 28, And the thing is, he hasn't played all that much football because of injuries, so there's still gas in the tank if he can prove he's fit. So we'll see how that goes. That's mad, though.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it for this one. So thanks everybody for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.